everyone. Welcome to the latest Bison video blog. Well, your challenge has been answered. The man himself has showed up to the studios. Craig Bohl, the head coach of the North Dakota State Bison, joins us for our latest. We've really made it now. The head coach is in the house.
Yeah, thanks for the memo on the tie, by the way, guys.
Leave it to the newspaper guy to dress down.
I can tell you this, Kopak is his own man. He's comfortable in his own skin, you know?
That's right.
Well, we appreciate you doing this. I guess the first thing that Jeff and I hear all the time, have you had a chance to really take a breath? Because right after the national championship run was right to recruiting, and now it seems like recruiting's done and we're starting spring ball.
You know what, it is a unique year, but it's a good problem to have. I think during the course of spring break, typically I've left town. I stayed in town and got caught up on a little things. We're getting set for a really important spring, and so the answer to your question is yes, I feel pretty rested and excited about getting ready to go.
How about your players? You know, your players went in right into winter workouts probably a week or two after that. Do you worry about a burnout factor with those kids?
You know what, a little bit of a concern, Jeff, particularly some of the players that were coming through with all the injuries and things like that. But, you know, young people are pretty doggone resilient, and all the indications that we've seen thus far are really positive. They had a great winter. Our gains are strong, and it'll be fun to see these guys out there in spring football.
Any signs now of the fat cat syndrome, where everybody's going to look at their ring more than they look at a weight room or things like that? Is that something you have to address, or have you addressed that already? Well,
we've addressed it, but you know what? The proof's going to be in the pudding, Jeff. It is difficult to come back and reach that high mark that we did last year. A lot of times the stars have to align right. You can talk about being overconfident and complacent and things like that, but it's been my experience in the past is that, you know what, you can talk about it, and doing it are two different things. All indications that we've seen so far are very positive. The guys seem very hungry, but I'm not naive. I know that, you know, they go through the lunch line over at school. Everybody tells them how great they are. The newspaper guy over here says you guys are great. And you know what, it's a new year. And I know our head strength coach, Jim Kramer, wouldn't let them wear any of their championship gear, so that crap is gone. It's a new year.
If you want me to, I'll rip them. I'll just rip them right after that.
Yeah. How about for you walking around town now, and how has that changed your perspective? Because the goal was always national championship. Right. Now you achieved it. What is the new goal now?
Well, the new goal is to win another one. And the only thing that I can do, Dom, is I guess go back on maybe some of my experiences that I had when I was at the University of Nebraska. It is very difficult to replicate and to go back to back. You know, we set a high mark to return Bison football back to national prominence. I think we've done that. But it is going to be a challenge. This next year is a new year. We've got new players. We've had, you know, a lot of really experienced players that are gone. And, you know, certainly the national exposure is great. And you're right. You walk around our state and around our region, a lot of people are coming up to you that, you know, would never say anything before and tell you how great you are. You know what? I'm no longer a young coach. I also recognize that you live in the present, and we're in a new year.
You know, the one question that I think a lot of people have in spring football, and I thought like guys like John Pike and Coulter Boyer and Danny Eves, you know, were good players on the field, great players on the field. But I think what we saw, when those of us who dealt with them off the field, was you saw a lot of great leaders there. And it's an intangible factor. I think the older I get, the older you get, the more weight you put on that. How are you going to address that factor? Or are people stepping up already in that
Well,
role?
we've seen some of that with our off-season conditioning, Jeff, but that's one of those things that, you know what, you try to foster it as much as you can as a coaching staff. We've subdivided our football team into different groupings to make sure that they're set on leadership. But once again, that's got to be, I don't know, an intrinsic factor. It's a difficult thing to put your finger on. When you see it, you know it. You're not really tested until tough times come.
I want to ask you something, because we could never ask during the season, but I think the biggest speculation we always heard was, well, now that the Bison are one on top, Craig's not going to get contacted for other jobs. Did you get contacted for other jobs during this run or during the offseason?
Well, you know what, as Jeff knows, there's always a statement that I have. I don't comment on any of those things. This is a great school, and you know, I'm committed to this school, and we're looking at a new year, and so you know, those things really are not on the radar screen, particularly right now. We're in a new cycle.
How about on the flip side, players? Does a title and more national exposure lead to maybe more transfers trying to contact you and saying, hey, I liked your program, saw it on ESPN2. What do you think? I'm you know, second string at a great university. Right. I want more playing time.
We were contacted by a lot more guys this offseason, and I think certainly the national exposure during the playoff run and then the national championship game really changed our visibility nationally. We've gone back to the things that have made us successful, though, is really kind of clinging to, our value systems, our core values, and that's been made up of guys that traditionally are playing from our immediate area, and certainly we've gone out to other areas, but you're not going to see a lot of wholesale changes within our program. We got to stick to our knitting. That's what brought us to the point of being a good football program. We're not going to sway from that.
Are you going to take any of those guys that contacted you?
Well, you know what? Right now, we're not planning to take any FBS transfers. We've always supplemented our football team, however, with some good college, junior college players. And, you said a couple of those names right there, John Pike and Chad Wilson. Those guys have been great program guys, and so we're going to continue to look to do that. I would say that we've had better results with that than mixed results. So look for us to do something along those lines.
The other biggest topic we talk about in here, it seems, over the last month has been scheduling. Since now you guys finally got an 11th game.
We're playing A&M.
Yes, Prairie View A&M.
Yeah.
But when you look at, and Nebraska called, and the fans were like, well, why didn't the Bison go play him? And I know you're strict to, you want to play one FBS game a year because of how tough the Valley is.
Right.
But I think for the viewers out there, for you to explain what is the exact thought process of why you don't play a Nebraska or a Wisconsin when you already have a Colorado State on your schedule.
Well, what Gene Taylor and I agreed to several years ago is every time we put a team on our schedule, first of all, we have a legitimate chance to win. And then the next thing you do is you look and say, all right, we understand that revenue is important. We're going to generate revenue with a guarantee game. Scheduling is really important. I think we saw the value this last year of being able to get in the playoffs, and moreover, not just getting in the playoffs, having those home playoff games. And so when you start to look at scheduling outside the Valley, I think you really got to choose the right schools when you start to look at what schools you're playing and why you're playing those games. And as we looked at it, saying, okay, let's play an FBS school. That's why you schedule Colorado State. We've got Kansas State in the future, Iowa, and that's scheduled about 5 years out. Now you start to look and saying, okay, that next choice is really, really important. I think we saw the value of the national exposure that we garnered, and we're not going to sway from that formula.
Next year, I believe you can go to 12 games. I know in the past you said that's something I don't want to do. Have you changed your opinion, or are you sticking to the I want to just play 11 games?
No, Gene and I have talked about it. I think if we come up with the right 12th game, that'll be important. I think certainly football is a physical game. What's probably different about football as opposed to all the other sports, it's a physically demanding game. Every time that you put your team out there on the field, you're exposing them to some type of wear and tear, and sometimes some injury, sometimes season-ending injury. So you got to weigh the benefit of how much exposure another game versus, okay, what type of game you're playing. It's a balance. It's a delicate line. I don't think that there's 100% formula to saying this is exactly right, but we're open to a 12th game. I think it's got to be imperative, though. That 12th game's got to bring benefit to NDSU, and particularly at home.
Would that be UND in your mind if you go down that road?
Well, you know what, I know that Gene has been in touch with their athletic director. I know our two presidents have talked specifically about scheduling games. There's a lot of dynamics that are really challenging in there. You're looking at dates and things like that. I know to this point they haven't come up with any concrete date.
How much would that change also, because Jeff and I talked about it last week, the FCS playoffs is going to go to 24 next season. It looks like it. So if a team is 8-3 versus a team that's 9-3 and you only play 11 games, or 7-4 and 8-4, do you foresee maybe being left out if you don't play a 12th game?
It's not so much being left out of the 12th game, but I think what we have found visiting with people on the selection committee is a FCS counter is imperative. If you can come up with another win, that's certainly going to help. Now, so you say, okay, is an FCS win versus an FCS loss, which one's, and that's where the rub comes in. And that's why a lot of schools are kind of 50-50 at doing it. Our point is if it's the right school, if it's at home, we'll go ahead and move forward.
Your friends in the FBS, do they talk to you and say, what was it like to go through the playoff system?
You know what, I can tell you this, and I made some pretty controversial statements. I've been on both ends of the spectrum. I've been involved with the bowl system for many, many years. Without question, the playoff system is a better system. I think it's a better system for the student athlete, and much of that you hear all kinds of arguments, not in the betterment, the welfare of the student athlete. I think that's a bunch of hogwash. I think players want to have an opportunity to compete on the field. We had our highest GPA this last semester. We were able to play 15 games, and I thought at the end of the year we were a very good football team.
All right, well, that's part one. We even got him for another part.
Hang around.
All right, so that's coming up. We'll get into the good stuff out spring football 2012 here on the Bison Media Blog.